So to our fourth speaker and our last speaker, who is Jim Wynn. Jim was head of school at John Cabot in Bristol. He then moved to head of research at RM, and then on to roles in Microsoft and in Cisco, and is now Chief Education Officer at Promethean. With that background and that overview of both the practice of education and also working within education and research in these companies, I think he's an excellent person to round off our four speakers. Jim.
Thanks, Gavin. I decided to do something different today and not have a set of slides, so I've now got a set of notes that I hope I can read. I've noticed that we are, even though we're in an Olympic fringe event, we've got the statutory empty seats at the front. And I'm also glad that Michael Burke this morning didn't say turn your phones off, put them on silent, because if people aren't, I see Mary tweeting away there, if people aren't tweeting and using the technology as it's meant to be used, then really this conference isn't really playing the right game. What we haven't got, of course, is a back channel of what people are saying about what we're saying, because, okay, you can tell me in a minute, Gavin, but if we were doing this, you know, if I'm a teacher in a classroom, one of the biggest issues for teachers in classroom is really knowing what the kids know. In fact, isn't that the single issue? If the teacher, Michelle talked about the teacher being more of an orchestrator, you know, bringing together the experiences that the teachers, the students, the learners, I suppose we should call them now, are going through, whether that's at home or whatever else. The person responsible for the progress of that learner, the orchestrator, needs feedback. Because if you don't get feedback, you don't know the potential, you don't know the position, and you can't plot the path of that learning. And I can't work out at the moment about whether you are following what I'm saying or not. But I think you know, this is some of the things which we as a company sell, and we use them all the time. And I just wondered, Mark, can we do an ad hoc question? Can we do one? Because I wonder just because I'm looking at the age profile. You know, Roger talked about the age No, you didn't talk about age. You talked about jurisdictional profile. Okay, well, let me change that into the age profile then. I wonder how many people in the room would actually understand this phrase. Let's get science trending. What is let's get science? Okay, can we just do, Mark, can we do, yes, I understand that phrase, let's get science trending. No, I don't, or, yeah, that'll do. Yes or no? Should we just do yes or no on that? Let's get science trending. What does that mean? Do you understand it, yes or no? Let's get science trending. Can you do that, Mark? Not Mark East, Mark Robinson. He wasn't ready for this, by the way. I didn't plan to do this. It just struck me that it's interesting in Michael's speech this morning. He talked about the best of gaming and the inspiration of being in a flight simulator and what bringing that sort of environment might do to a person. And I'll tell you where this phrase came from in a moment. So let's get science trending. Do you understand that phrase? Yes or no? Come on, just be honest. And if you think you know, say no. Because you really got to say yes if you really know it, okay? When you think it's ready, Mark, let's have a look. Well, that's not, 60% to 40%. 6 out of 10 say they know what it means. Well, I picked that up. I don't know if you're in the UK, you'll know Graham Norton. He has a chat show on, is it Friday or Saturday nights? And he had a guy called will.i.am. Anybody know who will.i.am is? A few nodding heads, okay. He's Black Eyed Peas lead singer. And it was shocking, actually, to the audience, but I was so thrilled when Graham Norton started to talk to will.i.am about what he was interested in. And you know what he said? STEM. I nearly fell off my seat. I had a few drinks as well, but I nearly fell off my seat. They got this pop singer who actually is talking about this phrase STEM on, you know, public television. He actually, I then found out, he's actually opened a STEM school in his hometown, and he intends, and this is picking up the Bloodhound thread, he intends to have a song of his broadcast back from Mars when the next, as long as the UK, we missed Mars, by the way, we didn't get it. When the next one lands on Mars, he's going to have one of his songs sent back, because what today is really about, what this event's about, is about inspiration, I think. And Steve and Sally this morning were talking a lot about, you know, how they were inspired. And, you know, Andy was talking about what happened with the Apollo effect, how people were inspired to be engineers. And will.i.am is actually talking about exactly the same thing. And if you go to his website, you'll see, let's get science trending. He wants this to be tweeted. He wants the young people to actually pick up the fact that people do find science important. Now, my next challenge, I want to ask another question, is how many of you have tweeted about STEM? None of you, probably. Thanks, Mary said yes, because there's always one in the room. You have. You lying? Okay, right. But, you know, the audience that we've got to get into, now, John over there, John, what were the jobs that you found, John, on the digital ethnographer, the social media editor, the media ecologist? 3 jobs advertised in The Guardian a couple of months ago. Those jobs didn't exist a few years ago, and most of us in the room don't know what those jobs mean. And yet there are jobs now in those areas. And just to follow that trend, you know, the chance of those jobs being filled might be slim, because we in the room maybe aren't encouraging young people to follow what Andy's ambassadors are doing. Now, the Bloodhound STEM ambassadors are something open to all people. If you run a business, you can get some of your staff to become ambassadors. We've done it at Promethean. And then those ambassadors can go into schools and get the little the little cardboard car with a balloon and do all the things that Andy was talking about to inspire children to actually see the Bloodhound effect, which we hope will be as big as the Apollo effect was back in '69 or whatever it was. Now, what's disappointing about Andy's talk is that he said 5,000 schools have signed up. Now, if I remember rightly, there's about 32,000 schools in the UK. So you're not doing very well, really. But probably them to blame. Do you think they're to blame? No, we need the ambassadors to get out there to inspire the schools to want to be part of what Andy's saying. And the other thing that Andy didn't tell you as well, that it probably will never happen because they're running out of money. And you wouldn't do this, but I'm going to do it. They need sponsorship all the time, by the way. You know, we've put a little bit of money in because we're not that rich as a company. But if you've got any spare money at all, then see Andy afterwards, because they do need money, and he's too good a guy to actually say that. But I'm going to do the advert for them. It is inspirational. All the stats that Andy was talking about are the sorts of things that might just spark a young person. Just as Sally and Steve were talking about, Sally said that when she was 6 or 7, something happened. And in fact, it's a conversation I have at home quite often with my wife when we hear people talking about how they got to this wonderful position. There's something happens around when children are 7, 8, and 9. There's a story about Einstein that his dad gave him a compass, and some people say that it was his wonder at this invisible force field that made the needle point that started him off on his track to becoming who he was. Whether that's true or not, it actually was one of the things which inspired him, whether it was a single thing. But it could be something as simple as watching a video from the OU. Now, I want to pick that thread up as well, because I was lucky enough to be in Mombasa a few weeks ago with the Hala Foundation. And Rene Haller went to Kenya when he was 18 in 1954, I think it was, never came home. And as an ecologist, he looked at some of the work that one of the cement companies were doing and ripping out all the aggregate for making roads and leaving behind scarred landscapes. And he's built up an ecosystem, so there are trees and there are fishy eagles, and it's inspirational what he's doing. But actually, the bit I want to get to is the film crew who shoot all the films for FIFA and people like that, had a Canon EOS 5D Mark III camera. £2,500, shooting the best high-quality video you've ever seen. Just £2,500. And I've seen people like my old school Cabot, some of the videos that the kids are producing are inspirational in themselves. Obviously, you can't go on to an ice floe and take a picture of a polar bear, although we don't get into that story again. But children today, young children, can produce world-class output. Again, back at Cabot, we bought a 3-dimensional printer a number of years ago. It cost £30,000 then. You can get them for £1,000 now. And you should see the difference between an 11-year-old who tries to produce something out of balsa wood, and you know what it looks like? It looks like something that's made out of balsa wood. It's awful. The glue's here, and they can design stuff with a CAD-CAM knockdown price professional system, print it in 3D, and when they go home, that is world-class quality. And you can buy a printer now for £1,000. It's got no case, because the first thing you do is you print your own case, then you make the printer yourself from the printer. And if you haven't seen the articles, go to The Economist to actually do talk about the future of three-dimensional printing and how inspirational that can be. Now, we can talk all day about these front-end things, like we were lucky enough at my school to do that, but Michelle did talk about that school in Victoria, which was doing things on a shoestring. But I think you said, Michelle, it was the best school that you'd visited, which is really interesting that, you know, I think the message there, and in case you missed it, was you don't need all the money in the world. You don't need £10,000 anymore for a high-definition video camera. It's still a lot of money, £3,500, £2,500, but it is world-class. Now it's accessible to people. But unless we have the ideas and the inspiration about what to do with that equipment, you know, then really we're going down a route which might end up with children getting bored with that. So we've got to help teachers. We've got to help the educators or the orchestrators, whatever we want to call them, because there's not enough passage between different types of teacher about what works and what doesn't work. And just seeing Mark East from Microsoft in the audience, I do want to mention the innovative teachers and our own Promethean Planet, which I know many more of places where teachers can go and share ideas, where they can talk to each other about what works and what doesn't work, and inspire other teachers to try other things, which aren't always dependent upon money. They're not always. I just wanted to finish off with some of my own statistics, because we've heard a few, Andy said a few, but there's some amazing ones. I don't know if you've all read the Leach report from the UK. It's about 4 or 5 years old now, and it talked in there, and I remember the paragraph because it's so significant, paragraph 42. It talks about there being just a 0.6% shortage in STEM graduates into the UK economy in one particular year. So around about 0.5% shortage. But it then goes on to say that that costs the Exchequer $4 billion a year in lost revenue because of the work that doesn't go on. So it might sound like a low number, you know, 0.5%, but the impact is enormous in what's going on. And it is worldwide as well. In South Africa, there are 12,400 pharmacists today. They actually are short of 12,000 more. They've got only about 50% of what they need. The unemployment rate in South Africa is 24% officially. The unemployment rate among skilled technicians is 0.4%, so you're almost guaranteed a job. But there's still 30.5% skilled jobs vacant. And that will flow on to sort of things that people are talking about the ability of continents like Africa to develop. And you know, one of the problems is that if you get qualified in Africa, or if you're a qualified nurse in Mexico, what do? You go to Texas, or you go to the UK, and you get a real drain. So this is a worldwide problem. We can't just look at this as an isolated thing. You know, the Economic Intelligence Unit just produced the report on training, and they said that roughly 1 in 3 employers puts in place a real serious training program. 1 in 3. Yet their estimate, this is a big broad brush thing, a well-trained workforce can add 20% of your profit line easily, the minimum. You know, it's a report which came out a few weeks ago from the EIU. It's really serious. Without the role models, we can't inspire. Without the bloodhounds, we can't have the next Apollo generation. The economy, $4 billion a year, lost the economy through STEM. This is an important day. I hope by the end of the day, the one thing I want to get out of today is what do we do about it? Because I've been to too many conferences when people tell you about the problems, and they come over here and they then tell you about this wonderful thing that's going on, like my three-dimensional printer, but they don't plug the gap. And I think that the most important part of today is talking to each other about how have you gone from there to there, because otherwise it's just all hot air, and we have to make a difference. It's very important. So I hope we can learn from that today, Gavin.